Hey guys, what's going on? Jimmy the Owl here, and I finally beat Remnant 2, the sequel that I didn't know I was ever getting, nor did I know I ever wanted, from Gung Ho Games, I think they're called. I want to say Gunfire Games would be the ones who developed the first game, Remnant from the Ashes, and I gotta say, this topped every expectation I had. They really buckled down and went for that quality I mentioned in the first video I did on the first game, over the quantity, which there seems to be so much more in this game than there was the first. So they kind of like hit the bar of quality and quantity, but we'll get into that through my adventures through this game. I'm definitely looking to go back and play through the game as melee, play through the game as a different class, play through the game using different guns to see if my enjoyment levels are the same or not, because one of the big replayability in Souls games are going back and using these different weapons and builds and getting the works done and stuff. So it'd be interesting to see if I enjoy the game as much going through it in one of those lights. But while I'm making this video, I'll probably won't have that information to hand. We'll have to see. So without further ado, let's stop playing around. Let's not beat around the bush. Let's get into my adventure for Remnant 2 from the Ashes, which it isn't called that, and I really hate. The first thing you would have already seen on the screen already is the character customization, which I think personally feels less than what we had in the first one. I would have to go back and compare, but I'm pretty sure we've got less customization in this one, which is really weird. But that is my biggest gripe of the game so far, because going straight into this is the tutorial. Into a cutscene, where we find out more about the two characters that will be a vocal point for now. Our character, which will be the vocal point for the rest of the game, and this random bitch that I don't remember her name of. I think it was Cassie, I'm pretty sure. And she's going to be our tutorial teacher. Going to get us to go from place to place. Tutorial is pretty decent. The character progression and, you know, getting me kind of close with these characters is done really well, even though 90% of the time it falls up into nothing. You get taught about the new jump mechanic, which I abuse a lot. Just walking up to a ledge and dodging will make you jump, so if you just double tap space, you'll just jump. There's no, like, fuck up on it ever, really. I didn't have a problem with the jump mechanic at all. Except from that, there's not much else new to be learned in this tutorial. It's just all the normal stuff that Remnant 1 had. Nothing really new kind of shapes in or pops up, really. And then you'll bump into the guy from the DLC, Bo, which was interesting. Didn't expect him to be the main honcho around anymore. That was weird to see. Seeming he was just like the weird kid from the DLC in the first one. And the main girl from that DLC, that I don't remember her name, I want to say it was fucking... I want to say Clement something? Something. I was right, it's Clementine, just double check that one. Clementine was from the DLC. She was like the main vocal point of beating the root, which is what caused like a majority of the good stuff to happen in the first game, and that's kind of where we stand in the second game. She is now out in the wild wastelands of Earth, stopping the root and stuff. The root is on its way out still. It's still not gone after a decade, but it's free roaming the streets of Earth is now fine. But overall, there's still some nests that give you trouble. There's not much else to say about the tutorial. It doesn't really teach you a lot. It doesn't really teach you anything different from the first game. Everything is there perfectly fine. And you meet the two characters and you head back to the ward where you do your first boss fight. It's it's passable. It is literally the antithesis of a tutorial boss. Just teaches you to dodge and shoot. It literally does nothing special at all. But it's nice to have a tutorial boss. I think that is nice to have. The first game didn't have that. And the first boss, depending what difficulty you are on, could just literally whomp your ass. So it was nice to be taught some boss stuff. That you go to Ward 13, but not the actual Ward 13, the outside. I'd have to compare this because, again, don't really remember the outside of Ward 13. It looks right from like the gate. Everything past the gate is a bit iffy if it's right or not. I kind of stand on the terms that they've kind of took an artistic view of what was there, because the tutorial in Remnant 1 definitely doesn't add up to me from where I'm walking around in the town in Remnant 2, but that's near or there. You get to meet all the familiar faces of like Reggie, the shop guy, fucking you know, I don't even remember who else shows up, to be honest. It's like literally Reggie and Ford, and I think like they're it. Oh, yeah, I'm being stupid. There's the guy who upgraded your weapons from the first game, and the girl who got you the boss stuff from the first game, also located right next to each other, being non-talkative as usual and helpful as usual. Their characters have stayed the exact same. Reggie's lost a leg, don't know if they ever explain why Reggie's missing a leg. And Ford is never aging, never dying, never ending. For some reason, don't know why that is, he never explains it. Ford is a mystery that just never gets answered, and it's really annoying. I'll get to that near the end of the game. But he's just a non-starter character that does nothing. I don't know if there's a reason for his existence in this game, other than to kick the plot off, but I digress. Pretty much a lot of you run around town. It teaches you about all the shops in the town and stuff. Get to know everyone, and then bada bing, bada boom, you bounce off into the Ward 13. Bit of a chilly experience going all the way back here. They mentioned Ellen, which was the original like head honcho of the first game that was like running the ward. They don't mention how or when she died. I'm just going to go with she died of old age. I mean, this takes a decade afterwards. Somehow Reggie outlived her, I guess. I don't know. They never really go into why she's gone. She's just not there. And then you, for some odd reason, like I said, he's such a non-starter of a character that like makes no explanation. Ford starts to crystal up, tells you not to follow him, it can only lead to bad things, then leaves. Then the girl from the DLC shows up and is like, what's going on here? And then gets sucked into the crystal, and then we get sucked in, starting the main part of the game. But before we can do that, I missed the crucial part of where you select your class. So for classes in this game, we have Challenger, which is the close range, durable, hard to kill, kind of like the Scrapper from the first game. Melee and shotguns are going to be the main vocal point for this character. Gunslinger is labeled as gun handling, fire rate, and ammo. I didn't look at it very much. Hunter is the same as the first game's Hunter. You know, long range, precision damage, marking, has the exact same skill pretty much. Handler is the one I chose, which has the pet companion. Really good for solo, I think. It's going to be like the prime one to just play solo if you don't want to queue up with anyone. The wolf can take a lot of aggro for you. And Medic is a one I was also looking at. Healing, support, well-rounded. Seems really fun. A lot of cool healing abilities come around with this guy. And he starts with the LMG. Except from that, there's Alchemist, which is what I found while playing my game. I did also find Summoner, which was the other one. Except from that, there is Explorer, Engineer, and Invader that are currently known to be in the game that you have to find and craft yourself. I don't know if there's any more. I really couldn't tell you. There's a chance there are a lot more that we just haven't found yet and just aren't located and easily found in the game files or something. Not a clue, but they did say that there was going to be loads of things hidden that people won't find instantly, so there's probably a lot more archetypes to be found, so I can't wait to see what else is found. But yeah, there are the archetypes. We choose Handler, and I wish I got Summoner, but I didn't know how to get the coins to buy it. I have now found out how to get the coins to buy it, so I might go roll and see if I can get Summoner to be my secondary class. But yeah, that's what we went with. Handler does have a problem in boss fights though, where the wolf is kind of null and void. It doesn't really do a lot. Depending on the boss, majority of them are these big hulking behemoths that are out of range from you or have like a flying spot that the wolf can't hit to damage. So it does fall flat in a lot of fights, but just exploring the areas, just having something to take aggro is just really nice. So that being said, pulled into the crystal, we get into the first area. Thank the heavens, one, we're not recycling areas from the first game. That is good. I like that. Secondly, thank the Lords, we don't start on Earth. Earth was one of the biggest weak points, except from Ron. So happy Ron doesn't exist in this one. But Earth is a really weak starting point for me, especially when we started on it already for the tutorial. We don't need to go back there. We already know that the route is dying in that area to have us go through. And these empty streets and stuff would have been a lackluster beginning, especially since we've already done that in the first game. Starting off in this like beautiful jungle, like Aztec-ish like area and zone is like really nice. Kind of reminds me of the swamp area from the first game, just like with like a glow up and more things to do. Running around and looting has also been heavily increased, and I don't feel as pointless anymore, like going into the buildings and stuff. There's normally something there. Granted, there are still pathways and stuff that just lead to nothing, but I think that is just a random generation of the world coming into full effect. Enemy selection in this area is also really nice. Also, straight into a story plot development of like, where the fuck are we? We've got to go find Clementine, giving me a solid reason to do what I'm doing. I felt in the first game it was like, go out there and figure it out, and you didn't really know what you were aiming for except the next boss. Quality of life changes instantly off the bat. You'll realize that you've got the minimap showing you multiple floors, which is really nice. The showing you stuff close to you is also amazing. Like, chests will be marked on the map if you walk near them, showing you doorways that you can go through when near them. Also marking doorways as side and main, so you know where you're going and what you're aiming for. So if you want to go do the side stuff, you can go do the side stuff. If you want to go do the main stuff, you can go do the main stuff. These are quality of life changes that I can't emphasize enough as being brilliant. Also, being marked as unexplored and explored. Minimap is a fucking godsend. The map itself is a godsend. Everything about this is an upgrade from the first game. It's amazing. Enemy designs as good as the first game, if not better. Gunplay is up there. The running animation is the exact same as the first one, but feels smoother. Everything feels smoother. Melee weapons feel smoother. Everything's running good. The biggest complaint I will have is the game itself runs poorly, and they've addressed this situation. It was made to be played with the upscaler. If you have the upscaler turned off, you're going to have a bad time. Once I had the upscaler on and set everything around, I eventually just put everything to the lowest just so I could have a nice experience, and I never dropped below 60, which is alright, but I can see that being a big problem with some people. The game is not running as it should. It is not optimized very well without the upscaler, and even with the upscaler on, there's a chance when you put stuff on the higher settings, you're gonna have a bad time on the quality side and the FPS side. But as long as I didn't drop below 60, I was perfectly fine with it. That is my biggest complaint though with the game, I would say, is probably the performance can be jarring if you do not have the upscaler on. Anyway, making our way through the world and level is the main goal. I try as much as I can to find side content because I want to do as much side stuff as possible. The first actual side content I run into is this room, which gave me so much trouble, it's unbelievable. So after my adventuring, I do come to this room, and I pull the lever and electricity starts going down. You're sandwiched in between two electrical fields, one below, one above. Instantly touching these fields will kill you. As it's spawning enemies, so you've got to move fast down this spiral staircase, making sure you don't go too fast to touch the one on the bottom, or you don't go too slow that you touch the one on the top, while clearing out the enemies, while making sure that you're not getting hit by the lightning, getting bounced off onto the crystals on the way down the stairs. This shit was hard for me to do. It took me a good couple of goes. It did give me some good stuff, but Jesus Christ, as just a starting thing to do, this took me some time. It took me like 4 or 5 goes just to try and get down there, because I was trying to patiently wait for it. I'm like, okay, I'm beating the electric down, so I've got to stop and slow down. Stop and slow down for a bit, and then on my way down, halfway down, after waiting a minute for the lightning to go down, it's already beating me down. And it's I've literally gotta play on devil's tiptoes and be right on top of the lightning at all time, or the electricity will just kill me from above. The dog takes a big L and just dies, but he buys a lot of time for you. Eventually I do it, pull the lever at the bottom, do all the fun stuff, and I do get an item that lets me craft a mod. I was in the beginning thinking, because it's just literally labeled craft weapon mod, I didn't know the woman could craft weapons. Eventually she does, but for your first I'd say 2 or 3 bosses, you're probably going to be crafting mods. It doesn't really give a boss weapon for a while. Just as an FYI, because I forgot to mention this, because I start with an assault rifle and a machine pistol. I then go buy the shotgun that the Challenger class starts with, and this is my gun for the rest of the game. I don't switch off it. I stay on this gun for the rest of the game, pretty much. So you won't see your primary weapon change at all. I think I try a bow and I try a crossbow at some point, but for the majority of the video, you're going to see shotgun rain and shotgun rain alone. The secondary changes up every now and again, because I don't really use it that much, but eventually I will get a weapon that I will just stick with. Also, just as a mentioning sake while we're here, 4 rings is now the new norm. You get 4 rings, 1 amulet, and weapon modifiers and mods. So you can modify the weapon to have certain stats, as well as have the weapon mod for, like, for example, the shotgun like has the fire bullets on it for the rest of the game and stuff like that. But then you can have like reload speed is increased by such and such a percent and stuff, or being aimed in for so long increases the damage for so much, stuff like that. You can start to get that is some things I wanted to mention. But overall, yeah, this is pretty much the loadout we'll be using. Eventually I just go for like kind of a fire build with the fire bullets, but that is for a different story, I would say. So yeah, moving on to the next part of the game. Ducking and diving through more cave systems, because there's a lot of tunnel dungeon crawling in this game that I actually do like and enjoy. The tunnels and dungeons were much more funner than they were in the first game for me, with a lot more enemy diversity and not just being the same recycled thing over and over and over again, which is always really nice. I was playing this on the 2nd difficulty, so not the first one, which is easy, but medium, which is recommended for you if you don't have any gear. Then the one up from that is recommended if you have gear, and then there's just Nightmare, which I haven't unlocked yet. I played on the one that didn't recommend high gear because I didn't want to be slogging and struggling through the whole game. That is recommended for high gear for a reason. I always look at this game more like a Diablo game, where like the difficulties are not there as a, well, if you can play on this difficulty, you're godlike. More, well, you should wait till you're geared to play on this difficulty. Just like in Diablo 4, you know, you gotta wait till you're geared to play on Torment difficulty. You can get there and you can play on it. We just don't recommend it if you're not geared. And that's kind of the way I look at this game. It's more of like a dungeon crawler. Get your gear, get your build, go up difficulties as you progress. The replayability of this game is going through the story in the adventure mode multiple times, so therefore I thought it was just going to be the best. It's like the hardest difficulty that wasn't recommended for high gear. The next boss on the chopping block is a bit of a confusing one for me. I don't know how I feel about it. I fought it twice, one on this difficulty, one on the harder difficulty, and on the harder difficulty it whooped my ass. On this one it didn't do that much of a threat. It's annoying how it works, and I don't really get how you're supposed to fight it without taking your time, and I'm not a time taker, I'm a go-getter. So this boss works very simply. You have the guy on the chair that all he can do is pulse blast and summon enemies. If I think he didn't summon enemies, I think I would enjoy this fight a lot more than I do when he does summon enemies. He's one of the fights that I don't think need the enemy summoning feature. A lot of the fights in this game remove that feature from the fights, which I'm so grateful for, and give you other ways to supply your ammo intake, which is fucking amazing. I'm so glad they got rid of the whole every boss has ads because we need to solve the ammo problem, and found other ways to solve that problem. That's ace engineering and ace game design. Sadly, some bosses still carry that trope of we need enemies to give them ammo. Sadly, this is one of them, and fuck me, is it annoying as fuck trying to deal with ads while the eyeball is giving me madness, while it's firing fireballs at me, while the guy on the chair is also doing a big boom boom beam across the whole map. Like, there's too much stuff coming on for them to have ads in the picture as well. I'm already dodging too much stuff, but it's fine on this difficulty, and it doesn't take long. Eventually, I just learned you can just fucking stand right in front of the eye and shotgun it, and it really can't do a lot. It just has to sit there and take the damage. And eventually, he does go down. The fight itself is good. I would rate it high. I just wish it didn't have the ads. The ads kind of put a damper on what could be a really good boss, which is saddening. And then straight after this, it's literally not even like a walk, jump, hop, and skip, and the next boss is just there. For me, the Root Nexus has to be the worst boss in the game, and it shows up twice. The first time is complete and utter ass, which is this one. The next one, it shows up in my adventure run, which is a bit better, but still not good. Root Nexus fights seem like they're just not very good overall. Pretty much, you shoot a big tree, and it summons ads, and the wolf took care of most of the ads, so I literally didn't notice any of them, and I just shotgunned the tree over and over and over and over and over again until it died a death, and that was practically it. It's not a very fun fight, it's not a very good fight, it's just a fight that exists. As a boss fight, it is passable, but except for that, I can't sing high praises for this fight. It is just a generic fucking shoot the big spludgy thing while ads spawn, which is just... I did enough of that in the first game of ad spawning while I shoot the big spludgy thing. I don't need it in this one. This one is trying to elevate itself, and this shows signs of the first game, which I really don't want to see in the boss fights of this game. This game definitely has better and does a lot better. Even the next boss fight, which we'll get to in a minute. The next boss fight is fucking ace. I really like it, but it does show remnants of the first game. You could say remnants from the ashes, if you will. But yeah, this boss fight is nothing to write home about. No. But that was the end of my day one experience, pretty much, of the game. This boss fight, it was the end of it, and I felt pretty good going off on this fight. But there was still a lot more to come. Day 2 rolls around and we are more ready than we've ever been before. We've got the best friend perk unlocked. We are locking, moving, grooving, and shotgun booming. Shotgun is going pretty well. The AA-12 on crack cocaine is probably the best shotgun I've used in a while. Thank you Gunfire Games for making a shotgun that actually feels worthwhile and good to use. It's rare to see those in video games. Most of the time the shotgun falls into absolute dog shit trash or overly powered to the point of being nerfed to absolutely dog shit trash. So it's nice to see a good middle ground where a shotgun actually works at close range but doesn't absolutely obliterate people at long range, but is still decent at medium range, as a shotgun should be. We make our way through the tunnels and cave systems. As you can see, I've sorted my FOV out a bit now so that I can see more of the game without it looking like a fucking tube tunnel in a bowl. And from there we make our way to the next boss, which is where I have my first real struggle with the game. I'm just going to apologize now. Sorry for the little grinding noise in the last voiceover. There is construction going on in everyone's fucking garden around me, apparently. There's like 3 people getting their gardens done at the same exact time because... fuck it, everyone get it done at the same time and make as much noise as possible, so I have to have my window closed throughout the whole duration. Thanks, team. So I'm just going to apologize now. I'm going to try and keep the noise to the minimum. Window's closed now, because I didn't realize how loud it was, and I'm just apologizing for any disturbances it puts in the voiceover. I will try my best to minimize it as much as possible. Straight to the boss fight it is, lads. This boss fight made me instantly realize that they had kind of figured out what would make their gunplay work best in boss fights, and that was to go for more of a Demon Souls approach than a Dark Souls approach. What do I mean by this? Simply put, Demon Souls, if you've ever played it, you'll know every boss fight pretty much boils down to a gimmick you have to interact with to defeat the boss. Not many boss fights in that game are a one-on-one brawl with you just fighting the boss in a arena weapon v weapon. Normally there's some sort of interaction or weak spot or something you've got to hit so that you can beat them. Or even if you don't have that, they have like the gimmick of like there's multiple of them and you can only hit the right one, or so, you know, something along those lines. It constantly spits out flies and stuff, so you got to keep track on where all the flies are, keep track on the fucking poison meter. I can't really think. Tower Knight, you got to break his ankles. Man-Eater is just a dual boss fight. It's the monk, the old monk, is a gimmick in where you're supposed to fight people in PvP. There's just so many. There's the butcher guy who you have to hit his weak spot in his head or the blade in his stomach to actually deal damage to him. There's all these things in Demon Souls where all the boss fights are pretty much just something to do with a gimmick or mechanic you have to interact with to actually beat the fight, not just fight the guy one-on-one. This is where this game comes in. I think it realized with the guns and stuff, you don't really want to be doing a weapon v weapon fight it doesn't really work as well with guns, so they've kind of like gimmicked a lot of the bosses, but in a way that it works, not in a way that's like, oh, I hate this gimmick, oh, I'm sick of these gimmicks. Also, with these gimmicks, they kind of fix the ammo situation, having ammo spawn from certain things the boss does instead of having ammo spawn from ads. It's a great change up and a great way to fix the system of every boss fight has an ad. If the gimmicks get rid of the ads, I'd rather take the gimmicks over the ads. But what does the boss fight actually concur? As you've been seeing on the screen, how it works is very simple. You have a robot and a big giant alien head. You fight the robot in the beginning phase. He has arms that can detach and fly at you, and he has the big weak spot on top of his head. You need to focus on killing the robot first before you can get to the second phase. Once the robot has been downed, you want to try and make your way over to the big head as fast as possible so you can put as much damage underneath him as possible, because underneath him is where his big weak spot is. Once he gets to the robot, he will lose a chunk of health, healing said robot back to full health, and then he will now have a mechanic of his own. There's these little staircases located across the arena where you can jump to the other platforms located in the arena. If you stay on the platform where the head is located, he will charge a beam and he will just kill you. You need to kind of position yourself around the staircases at all times so that you always have a leap off strategy point, so you don't automatically just get caught out and down, because you can't run from one side of the platform to the other before he fires his little beam. So what you want to be doing is dodging his beam while focusing the robot. I had a lot of trouble with this because going from Souls games to Souls games, learning the nice, neat spot, the sweet spot in dodging can be difficult. This game has a weird sweet spot for me that took me a while to get used to. So when the robot would jump platform to platform, he would have an electrical discharge. This electrical discharge killed me a lot of times simply because I just didn't have the rolls down. Eventually, I did get rolling down, and he did stop using the electrical charge jump for some reason, so he did go down pretty easily once those things were linked. Also, the wolf can draw aggro from the big alien head, meaning I didn't have to jump and bail platform multiple times as well, which was really nice. It's a good thing that the wolf can do that, because the wolf does fall flat in a lot of boss fights, and knowing he can take aggro does make the wolf worthwhile in this boss fight in some way, shape or form. Without that, the wolf would also just be worthless in this boss fight, because he doesn't do any damage to the robot because he can't hit the weak spot, can't kill any of the arms just end up killing him, and he can't deal damage to the big head because it's floating, and it will just beam him to death, so it doesn't really matter. So with all those things aside, this boss fight is probably a good introduction to me. If you would ask me, it is probably one of the best introductions to a final boss in the area, where it gives you a little taste of what's to come. Like, the mechanical boss fights and the gimmick boss fights are going to be around, but they're also going to bring better things. Ammo without ads, more interesting boss fights instead of you just run away and gun him and hope he doesn't hit you and dodge his little silly weapon and then run around and gun him. There's more strategical thinking with the gimmicks and when you can and cannot shoot, and I think it does work better with a Souls game with guns to have gimmick boss fights like this. So I do appreciate the change up, and I do think it makes the boss fights more interesting and feel less generic overall. But that's the end of this area, and we get to go to the only returning place from the original Remnant, which is the teleportation place, which I forget the name of. Just a quickie here from me. I thought I'd point out, in the first game you could just access adventure mode in any area you wanted at the very beginning of the game, and it didn't matter. In this game, you have to beat the area to unlock the adventure mode version for it, so you can't just go to, like, let's say for example in the Remnant 1, you couldn't just start the game, boot up an adventure mode and ROM and go get like the laser gun or something like that, and then go back to your world and just eat ass with the laser gun. You would have to go through Earth, beat Earth, go to Ron, beat Ron, and then you would be able to adventure mode Ron and find the laser gun. So it's, you know, depending how you feel about it is going to be your take on that. I think it's fine. I do think you should have to beat the area first before you can adventure it. It just makes more sense that way. Like, you unlock the area to adventure it, not just you have every area at the beginning, go hog wild. At some point, maybe they change it. I don't know how it was in Remnant 1. Maybe they'll change it up so you can adventure mode wherever you want, no matter what. Probably if they ever release a DLC, I would go with that would be when you would be able to do it. because there is free DLCs coming. I have got them bookmarked and ready to go, so that should be nice whenever they come out. But yeah, I just thought I'd throw that one out there. Welcome to the Labyrinth, the only technical level that returns from the first game, except in the first game it was just a glorified teleportation room to take you from point A to point B in the story and worlds. This time it actually has a full-blown level with bosses to deal with on its own accord. If you liked the Labyrinth from the first game and just wanted it turned into a level, you're going to be actually pretty pleased with what they do. I think they expand the Labyrinth pretty well and make it a pretty decent thing. Instead of just being another throwaway glorified teleportation room, they put some depth and character in there and actually put a bit of a story plot in here that actually makes it worthwhile traversing the whole fucking area, which is nice. And you know, something in the first game I felt I didn't really feel in this game. I didn't ever feel like I was randomly wandering around, especially in the Labyrinth. I thought it was going to be hell on earth, because in the first one there was a lot of just little pathways that would suddenly appear as you walk towards it, and you never really knew which doorway you wanted and stuff to get to the teleportation you needed, so you kind of just randomly wandered around to doorway, hoping it was the right one. In this one I didn't feel like that. I kind of knew what was going on. I did get a bit lost because there was all these interactable objects I just didn't have the items for yet, but I realized very quickly that I need to progress through this level and get shit going before I'm allowed to interact with these items. Overall, the Labyrinth is a massive upgrade from what it was in the first game, and adds a bit more depth and a bit more lore to that area that I thought was unique, just didn't have anything going for it. The next thing of real note to happen is, and I haven't mentioned this yet, Dragon Hearts were the main way of healing in the first game. They are the relic of the first game. Now, to my knowledge, there wasn't any other relic, you just had to have the Dragon Heart. In this game, they put multiple different relics in, they all do different things. From, instead of just healing you instantly, healing you with health regeneration increase over time, or they can increase mod power and duration, so on and so forth. There's a load of different relics you can choose from now other than the heart one. You find one in the Labyrinth. I don't know if it's a guaranteed loot or if it's a can spawn, can not loot, but it's just a nice thing that I wanted to add in. I never changed from the Dragon Heart. I don't really feel like ever not having a big chunky heal. I'm more of a generic player when it comes to these things. I don't like going wacky and out of left field. Normally I kind of like to keep my builds normal, constricted to a straight line of my weapon, my heals, my damage. Now they kind of two-tap you with this, because what they do is to get through the area you have this instant where you've got to just sit and survive and clear the waves. While clearing the waves, this thing in the middle is slowly but steadily ripping the door open, with each wave taking more and more bricks away, and you just gotta sit there and survive. It's not really difficult in any sense of the imagination. It's just kill all the enemies as fast as you can to get the door open as quick as possible. The big circle thing in the middle just keeps dragging bricks away. There's nothing special to it. It's just a survive the waves area, but you gotta do it to open the door. Straight from there is actually the boss, so they kind of hit you with a double whammy of I wouldn't call it a mini boss because there's nothing boss-like about it. It is just a survival session, and then hit you with the boss. And the boss itself actually threw me through a loop. So this boss threw me through a bit of a loop because it is the most gimmicky boss the game throws at you, and I don't think he'll ever get gimmickier than this. I'll be shocked if there is one that's more gimmicky than this. It is a maze where they are got cubes just cubing around. They just keep flopping over onto their sides and moving around the maze, and you've got to destroy the squares on them that the normal enemies have for their weak spots, and destroying that will destroy one side of the cube, making it safe to go underneath that part of the cube when it lands on that side. So on and so forth. It's not a hard boss fight. The problem was I was struggling to figure out where the fuck the last one was every time, because each cube has 2 on them at any given moment, so it's just 2 that you've got to shoot. Each cube has 1, and I was always missing just 1, and it was irritating me because then you'd just get insta-killed because there's no safe area or anything like that, where you won't just take 1 hit and die. If you misplace yourself, you just die. They 1 hit and there's nothing you can do about it. So it took me a while. I died a lot to this very easy boss simply because I started to get annoyed at the fact I couldn't find the last one. But in essence, it's the easiest boss of all time. Just shoot the 2 fucking weak spots on every cube. But it took me a while to figure out that 1, every cube has 2 weak spots, and 2, which fucking cube have I missed a weak spot on? Only to find out that I was always missing one singular cube's weak spot because of how awkward it is to get it to show its weak spot. So yeah, this boss fight was the most annoyed I would say I got because it's very simple and easy. I just struggled with it for no reason. So the big stupid fucking idiot that I am has tried to start a new method of recording. Stop recording when I'm not at the computer. Now most people would think this is a normal, good idea. For me, not so much. See, the problem is that I have bad memory, which is why I left the recording on and I would have hours and hours and hours and hours and hours worth of footage of me stood around doing bollocks all. Now, the problem is, when I hit the stop recording button, I forget I'm not recording. So then I'll go downstairs, care for my girlfriend, do all the caring needs I need to do, and then I'll come back upstairs and play the game. Realize I'm not recording, but because I've just, spent 2 to 3 hours doing other things, kind of forget the record button exists, and you miss a cutscene. What happens here? There was a cutscene to explain the main plot of the game, and I do not have footage of it. So, I'll do my best to explain it. There's this big eyeball, there is Clementine, and we have found her. The idea is now, it gives us the main plot of the game, which is the root has gotten everywhere. It is terrible news for mankind. We don't know how to stop it, but there is a failsafe with an item we got from the last area we just did and the boss we killed. This failsafe will allow us to beat the final root and finally crush everything that is ever rooted. So with this, we have a new goal. Go around to the new worlds and go kill the final people to go get their crystals to activate the failsafe option. With our new goal in hand, it's time to enter the new worlds with the item he gives us to do so. Clementine wishes us luck, and they both stay here as we become kick-ass motherfuckers and start going to kill some gods, I think. I don't know what we're killing. Guardians, I guess, would probably be the best bet. Go around and kill the world guardians, I'm going to go with, is pretty much the ideology of it. But that is the pretty much top and tail of the cutscene. And we're on our merry way to the new part of the game, the new world. Before you can get there though, you do have to go and find the door. Instead of just walking through it, you've just got to go back to the beginning, kill the enemies, activate the door, and you'll go to the new area. It's not hard, it's a bit of a fucking annoyance, to be honest. I've got to actively go out of my way to do this when I could just, unlock it on the teleporter. But, whatever. I'll have the extra steps. Saying spoiler alert 30 minutes into a video seems kind of counterproductive, because you've kind of already followed me so far with all this shit I've been sprouting spoiler-wise. But I just want to ruin this one for this world because I have no clue how to pronounce the name of it, and you find out later on it's just a ship, so I'm just going to call it the ship. I don't feel like trying to learn the name of this world. The ship will do fine. The ship starts pretty cool. Corridors, really cool, unique looking buildings with a cool idea on the surface of having to go around and kill these people and find these locations to get these keys to unlock the big bad. Generally sounds like a fun experience. Sadly, the majority of the world just takes place in one open, gigantic, fucking barren wasteland. This is this game's version of Run. Just a sandy desert. This time, instead of being light, is dark, nothing to fucking do, just wander around and get slammed on by constantly flying enemies while they just fucking constantly shoot at you. There's not much you can do, it's just a never-ending fight and slog till you find either a door that you may or may not be able to open, or a dungeon that is part or not part of the main quest. And once you've done that, it's back to wandering the waste. I do not like this one bit. I was so hopeful they learned that Ron was a boring location, because deserts stink, because all it is just open sand and no one wants to traverse open sand. But they didn't learn. Instead, they just went, well, let's just have it dark. That will fix everything. As well as, for some reason, just instead of having a really easy to tell invisible wall, or like just a barricade of any sort to stop me from going where I shouldn't, let's just put poison gas around the whole edge of the map so they don't wander too far off from the beaten path. What's that path? Who the fuck knows? It's an open space. I'm getting annoyed, but like, I one of my pet peeves in video games is just not knowing where I'm going at all times. And when you just give me an open space and go, well, here's the thing you should be doing, but it's locked. Go wander and try and find the things that maybe will help you. Good luck. I didn't like it. The area itself wasn't too bad content-wise. It's just the main core of the wandering in an open space looking for a like dip in the ground, a tunnel, a cave, an elevator to go to said tunnels and cave. It's just, it was so irritating. I didn't like it at all. Once you're in the dungeons and stuff, the enemy designs are cool enough to get me by, and I do like the dungeons in the area, and I like everything else in between the main core exploration part. But like, Jesus, man, I hate it. Let's get some things knocked out, the things of importance and things that happened, so that I can get out of this fucking area and we can go to better pastures. So things of note would be the guy on your screen right now talking to me about the situation. He states that there are 3, maybe 4 keys, can't remember the exact number of keys I need, to go get the door open so he can take control over the ship once again. See, this is where the spoiler alert for the ship comes in. Except from that, it's just about wandering the waste, trying to find the 3 locations with the 3 keys so I can unlock the big bad door. Pretty fun dungeon was found where it became a time trial. You had about 5 minutes to go around and kill everything in the area, or quarantine would hit and you'd have to restart from the beginning 5 minutes again. It's a pretty fun little run through, kill everything and leave sort of experience. There's nothing like big or cool. It's not like the one in the first game where like your health slowly drains and each hit/kill gives you health back. It's just you've got 5 minutes, you better get around and kill everything, and you get an item at the end of it. It's a pretty fun, chill experience overall. One dungeon leads to one boss fight. The Abomination, which is, on all intents and purposes, a really slow and fight. It's one of the less interesting ones in the game, if I do say so myself. He just rolls around in a circle and spits out crap. If you stand in the middle of the 2 pillars, which is the ones he rolls around, because he has a set pattern to roll around in the water just outside of these pillars, then realistically, you're not really going to get damaged much. He's not going to hit you unless you're not pathing properly and dodging the random crap he spews out. The main mechanic of the fight is as followed. He has scrap metal on 3 locations of his body. Shooting these scrap metal pieces will show a weak spot. Shooting this weak spot will show his inner core, which is where you can do the most damage to him. It stuns him for a bit when you show off his inner core, when you get him down that low. And after you've done that, he normally rolls away back into one of the sewer pipes and spawns in adds. From there, you just kind of wait around, and then he starts rolling again, and rinse and repeat. The problem with this fight for me, as much as the boss looks cool and has like a really disgusting look to him, and his boss room really does fit him, he's just not that eventful of a boss. It's not terrible, and it's not broken, it's not boring, it's just long and uneventful, in my opinion. He's not difficult enough for the mechanic to go on for as long as it does. It's just me just watching him roll around the arena while I constantly try and shoot his weak spots. Every now and again, my wolf or me will deal with the adds in front of me for more ammo so I can deal with him more consistently and quicker. Rinse and repeat until eventually his weak spots are hit so many times that he dies. It just goes on for way too long, and that's the main problem with the fight. If it was shorter, then you might complain that it was way too easy, but at the moment, as it stands, it's way too easy anyway, and just goes on way too long for no reason. I'd rather just kill him quickly and be over and done with it, than have to prat around and fight him for longer for the same sort of feeling, if that makes any sense. From here, I started to play around with the relics that I can put on my Dragon Heart. Now, realistically, I don't really understand how these work, but I think they're just passive effects that you can have on a relic. So while you have that relic equipped, you'll have more health, more range damage, more critical damage, so on and so forth, depending what relic you slot in. It's just to make your build mean more. I don't really think that they're that useful or that impactful, especially on the lower ranks and on the cracked ones. Maybe once you start entering the higher difficulties, these mean more, but for the most part, they don't really do much for me, and I kind of switch them out very little, and not very often at all. I think the most thought I put into it was near the end of the game, so I just kind of left it alone for the most part. With another dungeon down, another key has been achieved. After one dungeon and one elevator / stasis chair ride down to the bottom floor, we are at our final boss fight to get our final key to go fight the actual final boss fight. And this guy was pretty fucking fun. Granted, I didn't have the best start to him, seeing that I kind of let the cutscene end, looked really cool, get into the boss fight, fire one gunshot at him, and get swiped and instantly downed. The first attempt did not go very well, to say the least. It was an abysmal first attempt. Second attempt is going fucking wonderfully. I'm hitting them left, right, and center. I'm doing all the mechanics well, getting hit by a blast wave every now and again, but overall doing great. But then I run out of ammo. He's one hit off of death pretty much. I whip out my secondary. It's a load of shite. The cubes don't do any damage. He's literally one breath away from death, but bada bing, bada boom, I take a big L, and it's back to the basics. Let's get the basics done. This boss is a two-form boss fight. The first one is this skeleton ghost AR electric hybrid thing that floats around, fires missiles, does spooky stuff. The second form is a orb in the center that does pulsing electrical attacks and does like a thing where like it spins around with these outlines. When it stops, it pulses out damage from the outlines. You know, normal like raid boss kind of mechanics is what you're looking at here, with a couple of ads thrown in every now and again just to give you a couple of ammo supplies, but they weren't any bother realistically. It's just weaker versions of the ghosts, and that's the boss fight pretty much. There's some different mechanics in there, like there's a thing where like it goes a bit dark and it just summons a loads of ads, so on and so forth, but the general premise of the boss fight is pretty simple. Damage the ghost, damage the orb, damage the ghost, damage the orb until you win. It's easy to dodge the ghost attacks, in my opinion, than it is to dodge the orb's attacks. So the orb gives me a bit of problem, because like I said in the beginning, when you switch from Souls-like to Souls-like, finding that sweet spot in the dodge is hard. By this point, I'm pretty much there. It's just some things throw me through a loop. And this is one of the bosses that throw me through a bit of a loop on when to dodge. But that being said, it is a pretty enjoyable boss fight. I did like it. It was enjoyable, and with not as much effort, only 3 tries, and one of them wasn't really a try. Literally got into the boss room and just got my shit slapped in, so I don't really count that as a try. It's a 2-try situation, and if I had a better secondary, it would have been a 1-try situation. I'm gonna say I did this in 1 try. 1 try and this guy goes down. Bada bing, bada boom. That means we can move on to get the final key so that we can go access the final boss fight. With all the keys found and located, that means we can go open the big bad door to go fight the big bad boss. All you do is slot all the items that you've just found, these like circular key things, into this random object, and it lights up the door, and eventually the door will open, and it's only a quick hop, jump, skip, and a sprint to the boss. It's not really much anything to talk about. It's just realistically straight to the final boss. Continuing the trend of end world bosses being the hardest thing in the world, this one is no exception. This guy kicked my ass because I didn't really understand what I was doing in the boss fight at any given moment, and to be honest, if you put me back into it, I probably would still struggle. I don't really get what's happening majority of the time. That's not the boss fight's fault, that's just my attention, like, it is laughably bad, so I can't fucking focus on everything that's going on at once, and this boss fight packs in as many things as possible on my screen at once in a small area, so I can never really feel comfortable or situated in a space that I feel comfortable in. So I always feel like my back is up against a wall trying to figure out where I want to be placed next and stuff. My biggest complaint for this boss fight is I never really understood the hand that puts like the warp hole in that drags you into it. I never really understood how to know where he's coming from and how to dodge it effectively, and it doesn't really seem like the boss shows you any signs of like him putting the hole, like the black hole, in a certain location or anything. So that's the only complaint I do have. Everything else about this boss is stellar. I love it. The gimmick is fine. Being stuck on the ledge and having to damage him while dodging all his shit. His weak spot is just in between his two hands that he stays connected with his body. There's a little orb in there, that's where you can deal the most damage. Other than that, you're not really going to be shooting him unless he uses the hands that come out of the ground. You can do decent damage to them with my I could with my shotgun. I don't know if any other weapon is going to be worthwhile shooting those, but I did decent damage with my shotgun when I got close to them. That was my biggest problem with boss fights like this. When you have a shotgun though, you have to stand like right near the edge or be right close to things, and well, projectiles and fucking lasers and shit are flying from each and every direction. You can't just sit next to something and shoot it. You've got to keep moving, so your damage numbers are constantly fluctuating between high and low just because of that fact. That's not a problem though, because when you choose a shotgun, you kind of go in with that idea that if you don't get close to your target, you're not going to do a lot of damage as if you were right next to them. That's just the trade-off with shotguns, but these boss fights amplify that problem more because you're stuck on a small surface, not able to always be close to the target. Overall, I would say this is probably the boss fight I struggled the most with, except from the final boss in the whole game. This is the boss fight that gave me the most jip. After this point, I'm pretty sure it's clean sailing. I've got the dodge timings down and stuff on most things now, so we don't really struggle against the boss again until near the end of the game, I would say. There's a couple of bosses in the end zone that give me a bit of quapples, but except from that, there ain't much else to it. He does go down, and then we restore the ship's power to the talking head or something or other. I didn't really get what was happening. I didn't see an option to choose between the guy downstairs and the guy who was telling me to meet him here in the first place. I don't fucking know. Whatever happens, you kill the Guardian, you get control of the ship back, and it's off to the next area. Now, realizing that we're coming up to an hour in, we're like 20 minutes, if that, from being an hour into this video, and we still have this area and 2 other areas to clear, it might be a long video, and I'm sorry for that, but this game was really fun to me, and I just have loads of things to say about it, and loads of points and interesting things that I thought happened that I just really enjoyed. With the next area being the castle, as I dub it, with a lot of corridors, locked doors, a library, chests, everything, and it's like what I could describe best as a high fantasy like castle, where you just run around and do your shit, with enemies just being these weird looking like fairy knights and stuff. Not much of note happens here, it's just me running around. The key thing is that you just gotta find this gesture that will give you certain items to progress you through the story in the main part of this world. That is your main goal through the majority of the castle. There's not much else to it. It is just trying to find the jester, Jesus Christ, I can never say that word, jester, there we go, and have him give us a item that will let us go in through paintings on the walls and have him open doorways to get us to certain items and stuff. He's the main guy that's going to get you through this world. Not much of note happens here realistically. Eventually I do find a mini game in one place that unlocks a bow that I try and use for a bit, but I don't really get along with it that well, so we end up dropping it not long after. But it does feel nice. The bow is well made in this game. If I was using a build like that, focusing on more precision shots and stuff, a bow or a crossbow probably would lean more towards the bow. It felt a little better, would probably be my choice. But yeah, it's a pretty nice area. There's nothing wrong with it. It's probably one of my new favorite areas because it's just really nice looking. And the area itself is a maze for dummies, is the best way I can put it. Because I never got lost, but I was always running into locked doors and stuff, but I could figure my way around them. Unlike a normal labyrinth where I just get lost in an instance and don't know where I'm going. This world did it really well. Once you find the jester, there we go, said it, he will give you, the first time you see him, he will give you a quill that will open these doors on the wall. This will take you to probably actually my favorite area in the game. I don't think anything comes close to it. in terms of just being pure fun to explore, with all these nooks and crannies actually leading to stuff to actually loot. It is amazing. I love this little city town thing they've got based in like the olden times. Everyone's using old rifles and hatchets and stuff, giving a very, with nothing else better to compare it to, if I've got to go Souls-like, it gives a very Bloodborne-esque vibe with the hunters and stuff, without being too close to it for me to be able to make a full-blown comparison. So, but the cityscape and stuff itself, it's really fun. Also, I found a little secret. I stood too close to a grate and got dragged under it. Kind of worried that it was an insta-kill, but actually it was a secret that led me down to a technical boss fight that did give me an item. It was a really cool thing. I generally do love everything in this area. There was a secret I couldn't figure out with a clock tower and stuff, and I would love to try and go back and figure that out. But for the most part, this whole area, everything about it, I just love every second of it. It is one of my favorite areas in the game. It is so fun to explore the city. Every nook and cranny, like I said, just has an item waiting to be found. Even if it is just iron scrap or whatever, it's all useful stuff you end up using later on anyway. None of the dead... I never felt like I went down somewhere and it was just a worthless dead end. There was always something cool waiting for me around the corner in the city. It's my favorite area. By far, bar to none, it's got to be my favorite area. So, after a quick exploring of my favorite area of all time, I went back to the ward to see there was something weird marked on my map, so I went to go check out what it actually was. Turns out it was a footlocker that a Mr. Ford had left for us, I guess. It had a code lock that we didn't know the code to, so I did a quick Google just to see if I could just Google the code and be done, but it says that it's on the bottom of your flashlight. Quick inspection later, turns out I have no clue what those fucking numbers read. Thankfully though, the code is no different in any game, so it's the same code for everyone. So a quick Google later and video guide told me the code was whatever the fuck the code was. Put that bad boy in and it unlocks us a key. Where we go with that key, we go over to the fences over here. If these fences aren't unlocked for you and opened, that means you haven't progressed the story far enough apparently, which means you just gotta go play some more story. From there, you just go all the way down, follow the fucking corridors all the way to a locked door, use the key, and bada bing, bada boom, you've come across the submachine gun. Just as stupid as it was to find in the first game, the second game kind of upped the ante with a interactable item I needed to figure out where the fuck the code was. Jesus. Back to the greatest area of all time, and I'm scaling the tower that I just didn't know how to figure out the answer. Pretty much, there's an elevator, but you can't take it unless you get all the way to the top and turn the power on for it. And what you do is you just slowly but steadily climb the tower. It was a really fun little mini thing to do. Sadly, once you get to the top, it's a long way up. You've got to do some platforming stuff, get up as high as you possibly can. Go out of the window, into a window, to go up a ladder, to go out of a window. It's all that fun stuff. There's loads of chests on the way up, loads of loot, loads of enemies, loads of fun times. Once you get to the top, there's a gear that's missing, and I'm pretty sure it has something to do with an area I found earlier that has all these clocks in it, and they say all the clocks strike at certain times, all these gears. There's probably some way to figure it out. I just don't have the brain capacity to do it. So sadly, I just have to leave the tower. I have no clue what happens. If I put the clock tower in, it might spawn an enemy, it might spawn a boss or something. Only the Lord can tell you, it's really, I have no clue. But then from here, it's just back to exploring the area, trying to find out where I need. Now, please don't hate me for comparing this to Blighttown, because it's nothing like Blighttown. Blighttown stinks, this does not. So, the Great Sewers, as you walk in, doesn't instantly hit Blighttown vibes. It's only as you walk through a couple of seconds, and then I saw all the rickety wooden structures and stuff, and then I instantly was just like, great, I'm gonna have to try and make my way across broken wooden structures, jumping, diving, and just trying to make my way all the way down the sewers to a boss. And it's just going to be me getting poisoned by these little scuttle crab things, and these enemies probably have poison on their bullets because of all the green slime and fucking fog that's all around. It's going to be irritating. I'm going to fucking lose my mind. They've just ruined the greatest area in the game. Well done, team. Thankfully, it turned out none of those things came true. None of them, no enemy applies a status effect, which is nice. And the enemies are just the same as up on the top, except there's now like these slime monsters that are roaming the area. But there's still the same rifle-wielding, torch-wielding maniacs that were on the surface, and you just make your way through the area as normal as if I was just going above, but this time the sewer is more like grounded, more streamlined, more tight corridors, and more like the gunfights are more restricted. It works well for my shotgun, and we just make all the way to the boss fight. Before we go do the boss, it's time to select a second archetype. You see, this game allows you to have 2 classes selected at once. You have the class you select at the very beginning of the game, and then a class that you can unlock at all, ever, when you're just running through the game. We unlocked this one from killing that random beast that dragged us into his den in the town. So I didn't know this at the time. I just thought the Philosopher's Stone was a way to get an item, like a boss weapon. Turned out it was a secret archetype according to the achievement, and we can go on a merry way. All it really does is increase potency of potions, which I don't really use, so it didn't really do much for me. But it was still a fun thing to get, and I'm still glad I found it. It was just a nice thing to have a second archetype. I still don't really get what the ability does. I just randomly threw it down most of the time to see if it did anything. But for the most part, I just really didn't understand what it did. There are some cool secondary archetypes out there, so it wasn't the best find ever, but it was still nice to have a secondary archetype. The Blow King is next up to bat, and this fight is a long one, but not because it's hard or anything. If anything, it's very simple in nature, but it does do a lot of damage. The general premise is there's this big blob on the roof. This big blob will let 2 to 3 orbs out, depending on his health, and you have to shoot the one. They're both armored, and you have to shoot the one with red on it. Shooting the one with red on it is the one that damages him directly. Once you've damaged him directly enough times with the orbs, they'll all go back and fly into him. Once that has happened, then he will just kind of like crawl away into a hole, come back out a different one, and use his abilities. I found the best way to dodge his abilities was to run back and forth, jumping from platform to platform across the center, just running back and forth and doing that. I don't know if jumping gives iframes, but it definitely felt like it did, because I didn't get hit like at all while doing this. So either jumping is safe, or he just doesn't know how to hit a moving target. One of the two. Once that's happened, he's done all his abilities, you got some free shots on him, he'll let his orbs back out. Once his orbs are back out, it's rinse and repeat, find the red one, shoot his armor off, shoot him for as much as possible, and then he'll fly back into him, rinse and repeat. There is ads down below if you need ammo. I don't know if they would have came to the surface or not, because my wolf was literally aggroed onto them every second of the fight, so they never moved away from there, so I wouldn't know if this fight is harder or not without the wolf. I did like the fight, and I like the strategical aspect of me constantly having to keep moving from platform to platform, try and keep myself well positioned against wherever he was, or against how many orbs were flying at me at any given time. I just felt like it was just a bit slow, a bit sluggish, and maybe it was because, again, I'm using a shotgun and the orbs are flying up in the air. I don't get to do as much damage as I want, but eventually he does just go down, dies, and doesn't get back up, and we can move on with our lives. Sadly, I didn't check this out, but I really wish I did. Meeting back up with the Jester, he plays a card game with you. He puts all the cards down on the floor and he starts shuffling them. He shows you which cards you want to be looking at and then shuffles them again. After a quick shuffle, he slams them all on the wall, and then you choose the right one he showed you to go through, giving you the right pathway. I kind of wish I tested it out to see what happens if you go through the wrong one, if you just get brought back to this room, get punished, get a new item, or get whatever happens. I kind of wish I tested it because I have no clue what happens, but I went the right way and got the right answers. After a quick hop, jump, and skip later, it'll bring you back to the beginning of the area, of the whole world, where there was 2 face masks on the floor that you had to slot in. Now we have both of them because of the Jester. We can slot both of them into there and open up to the final boss of this area. What a way to set up a boss, by the way. So they have you walk into this big throne room, is what I would dub it as his I guess soldiers, you would call them, with their wings, slowly guide him down on his throne chair as he just talks nothing but shit to you the whole time, saying how he can crush you for his entertainment. You are worthless, you are nothing, you shouldn't even be wasting his time. Now, to me, those are fighting words, and you have an option to speak to him. Hell, you might even be able to not fight this guy. But sweet baby, you do not come to fighting words with a guy with a shotgun, a wolf, and a whole lot of time on his hands. We will be fighting. This is the first, I would say, proper man's boss fight. He comes at you with his sword, no fucking gimmicks involved, like with you have to do this to do this to do this. You can just go mono v mono with this man and gun him down. He does have his tricks. He can summon orbs that fire swords at you and stuff, and he can dash across the screen and whatnot, but overall he is just there, him, his sword and his skills versus you, your guns and your skills, and you just fight, and I fucking love it. It is so cool. All of his skills are really nice. I loved the look of him. I loved how cocky he was. I just loved fighting him. Sadly, I did it in one go, so I didn't get multiple times to fully understand how the fight went. Because it's a proper man-v-man fight, there's no gimmicks I've got to learn instantly. I didn't have much of a struggle with the fight. Stacking my status effects and the wolf just took him down pretty easily and quickly. Not to say he was a pushover by any stretch of the imagination. He did give me a bit of an ass whooping. He did put me onto some low moments, and I did have to heal a lot of times. I think I came out of this with one heal left, if that. And his second phase with all the swords slamming into the ground really puts you in a, oh shit, I'm in trouble, and he really starts to up the ante in his second phase. Overall, this is probably the weakest, I would say, of all the fights, difficulty-wise. But all of the end bosses so far, this one's got to take the cake. Is just it's got such a cool arena, such a cool style. Everything about it is great. He's not a gimmick. He is just a one-on-one, mono v mono, throwdown boss. I loved every second of it. I just wish he had a bit more difficulty to him. I wish he was a bit more on your nose sort of boss. Like, he doesn't try and keep up with you as much. He doesn't try and close the distance a lot, and I feel like he should. He especially in the first phase, I felt like he didn't pose much of a threat at all in the first phase. Second phase, he does pose more of a threat. There was some part like where he has like a third phase ish where he's like doing all this dancing stuff and launching swords into the air, but like nothing was happening. I don't know what that's about, but eventually he does fall. He is the only boss of the like final bosses of the world, like the world guardians, that I do in one take. He goes down and we can move on to the next area, the next world, the next part of the game. Ladies and gentlemen, we're in endgame territory now. Taking all of the crystals back to the eyeball, which turned into a guy now for some reason, and Clementine, we get to find out about what's the next step in our quest to save the world. Turns out the next step in our quest is to go to the source of the root and take it down at its core with our failsafe option. So, without further ado, we head over to Root Earth. The best way to describe Root Earth is my favourite part of Earth from the first game, like that more mushroomy, overgrown, rooted area that you walk through, but now made more darkened and mysterious, as you can see that the root is just completely taken hold of everything and anything around it. It's nice. I like it. I like the idea that there's just another version of Earth out there that is just completely rooted and there's nothing we can do about it except try and clear it out. I kind of wish Earth in the first game looked like that, instead of just being like dead, desolate, and nothing going on. Like, it was just completely overtaken. Instead of looking like everyone just vanished, it looks like everyone has been consumed, which I really like. Overall, Root Earth is not the strongest ending areas. I definitely prefer the castle and the first area. Ship is definitely the worst, so this is like, you know, not up there, but it's like middle of the road. Definitely isn't the best place, but definitely isn't the worst place. But overall, I do rate the area. I kind of like the way they went for Earth with a twist, but yeah, I mean, it's Earth still at the end of the day, so it is what it is. I like Root Earth for many reasons. One of the big reasons I do like this is the final area is simply because it's a straight line, the final stretch in the most literal form. Obviously, there's a couple of side paths you can go down and find some secret stuff, but for the most part, there's not like long corridors and other dungeons leading you to something special. You are literally on the final stretch, getting through Root Earth and pushing all the way to the final part of the game. With this means that you pretty much are just bouncing a boss fight to boss fight or challenge to challenge kind of world, which is, I think, really good as a final world. I don't like when final worlds are these overblown, trying to be too epic, too big. Like, I like more of the, we're on the final stretch, there's not much less. It's a clean-cut road down to the end. With this means that the first challenge room you come to, because it's not really a boss fight, first challenge room you come to is pretty much like 5 minutes after you enter, and it is just a survive the onslaught of enemies until the big bad spawns and kill the big bad and you can leave. It's not very hard. It took me 2 goes to do it, simply because I got overwhelmed and they hit like trucks. So It took a while, but we got it done in 2 goes, and we can move on to the next obstacle in our way. The next boss is up to bat, and he is named Cancer. This guy was a tough cookie to crack. Kind of remind me of the tree boss from the first game, if done better. It doesn't have any ads. It was an ad-free fight. I didn't have to worry about that. He had a lot of AoE that spawned in ammo. His tree trunks, when broken, would spawn in ammo, and that was nice enough. I didn't need any other supply. Him himself is a bit of a fucking handful. With a lot of AoE and send down the line roots, he is the definition of a root enemy. All he does is throw twigs and tree roots at you from the ground, headbutts that spawn roots all around them. He goes hog wild with his rooting abilities. He's not just limited to that though, he does just have normal attacks. He will just dash forward and do a swing, swing, wait for it, swing again. I like the idea that they kind of put timed attacks on these guys so that you don't just spam roll as soon as they jump on you like in the first game, but you actually have to think and time your dodges effectively. This guy's showing it off more than the others, that like you gotta time your dodge perfectly or you're just gonna end up getting hit if you just spam roll. Really like that, and it doesn't just have long attack strings like Elden Ring tried to do, where everyone just had mile long attack strings that you had to kind of dodge well or you just get hit, you couldn't just spam it. I like this more where he's fast and he can, you know, time his attack so you can't just spam roll, but at the same time he's not just forever attacking me and I can't attack him back. The fight itself is pretty fun. I do enjoy it. I do think it's one of the better ones that aren't a world boss, like a end of world boss, like just as a generic boss to fight on your way through to something. He does give the beans, and he does go hard, and he does try and kick your ass. It took me about like 4 or 5 goes to finally down this behemoth of a man, and even then I still struggled on the 5th. When all is said and done though, bro goes down, Cancer is no more, we beat Cancer, and we can move on. Next up to bat is Venom. This guy is a just amped up version of the big bad from the survival round we did earlier, but with a lot more style, finesse and skills on him to make him a much more difficult opponent. He still has the slash attacks that he did, but they are barely used now because he has much more threatening stuff, and goddamn, this guy was a bit of a prick to beat. I don't know why I struggled on him so much, because in essence he's not that hard. But like his attacks just fucked me up. He has the normal attacks he had when he was in the survival room. Those aren't too bad, but when they catch you out, they do big damage. Then he has a move where he fires the projectiles. Those projectiles also do big damage. Other than that, he just has AoE swords popping up from the ground. They're not really swords, they're like root tendrils, I guess. But when like he gets to a second phase and they're popping up everywhere, and I'm trying to dodge him, and he's doing AoE, and he's doing his slash attacks, he can be a bit of a mouthful. And he does a lot of damage, and it's just, I don't know, man, he gave me beef. He gave me the beef, and it was hard to beat. But eventually, he does go down. I'm kind of disappointed they just reused the guy that was in the survival round at the very beginning of the area, just beefed them up to 11. He was difficult and he was fun. I was just hoping for something else, you know, something different, something unique. We are on the final stretch and this is the last thing before the boss fight is at hand, and yeah, it didn't really hit as hard fighting something I've already fought. But the fight itself is fine. The fight itself is pretty chill. I don't hate the fight. I just wish it was something else and different. And the last 2 fights aren't gimmicky at all. They're just mono v mono fights. They don't really have a gimmick where I've got to hit a weak spot, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. So they felt a lot nicer to do going through the area, the final area. I didn't feel like I was being gimmicked out. I felt like I was fighting my way, slugging my way through the world. We were getting ready to finally beat the root. So that was also nice. I'm kind of glad there wasn't many gimmick fights on the way here, because there wasn't any. The only gimmick fight you could technically say was this the survivor round gimmick, but even then, that's like pushing it as a gimmick. But anyway, yeah, fight goes down, he goes down. Venom is not much of a problem if you have a brain. Me personally, no brain, no fucking patience, so it took a while, but eventually he does go down. So day 4 is going to end on adventure mode, and I'm not going to do a whole bit on like how my adventure mode went and what I did through it and all the bosses and all the air. I don't want to do that. The video is already long enough. I just want to do a quick bit on adventure mode and say how much better or worse it is than the first game. And then day 5/6, they're both the same day, so this game counted as day 5, was when I finally tackled the final boss and beat it. So, without further ado, let's talk about adventure mode. So adventure mode this time around, I would say, is better than the first game. It did seem to just have more to do, and also the randomly generated stuff just felt better. I didn't feel like I was treading old water. I also got out of the 3 to 4 bosses I fought and did, I only had a repeat in one of them, and it was the boss where the eyeball, like, fucking tablet thing flies around the room while the other guy in the chair blasts your ass. That one was the only repeat I had. Everything else was different. There was a story going on in adventure mode that I didn't bump into in the main campaign, which is nice. If adventure mode has unique, dedicated stories to them that can spawn, that just makes adventure mode a lot more better. It makes it have a lot more replayability and a lot more reason to be done, other than just a quicker way to get boss weapons. Just like in general, it just feels better. Like the randomly generated stuff feels better. Everything just felt better. There was podiums where I could buy stuff. I didn't figure out to get the currency until I looked it up. But like all this stuff being in adventure mode, I don't know if it's in the main campaign or not. That's like a sight to be beheld. I don't know. I'd have to replay the main campaign a couple more times to see if I bump into these things. But overall, I am very impressed with how they've overhauled the adventure mode and just made the world feel more random, more unique with each playthrough. That's nice. I always do appreciate that. So overall, I think they nailed it, and I think the criticisms I said were pretty much matched in this version of the game. Like in Remnant 2, I think all the complaints I had about From the Ashes have been matched, if not improved more than I thought it would have been. With the squad arriving and getting ready to end the fight, it's time to do the final boss, and this by far has to be my most favourite boss in the whole entire Remnant series. I don't know what it is, it's just so freaking cool to me. It's so dope. It's just one of my favourite fights of all time. There is a lot of trial and error and learning about what the fuck you're supposed to do, what attacks do what. But once you've learned all this and the timings and your placements and where you should stand in certain areas and stuff, Jesus Christ, what a fight. I'm getting ahead of myself. It's a 2-phase boss fight with the second phase going into like a second phase of its own that goes crazy with it. But let me explain how this works. So the first phase is this creature. He's flying around, throwing his little sword around, having bolts of lightning coming down, and you've just got to aim for his head and deal as much damage as possible. He doesn't pose much of a threat. The biggest problem is getting down on dashing and dodging his slam down move that doesn't have like a real easy timing to understand to it. So I get caught by it a lot, but it's his only move that's worrying. The only other thing you have to worry about is that he summons these balls that if you leave alone will eventually just fly onto you and hurt you. They die in one hit from the shotgun, so they're not a worry for us. We can just plow them down. They are connected by lightning, and when that lightning connects them, you can kill 2 with 1 shot, so that's always nice. That's the only dangers in the first phase, and the first phase is just like a little ready check for what the second phase has to offer. Because now not only are you fighting him, but you're fighting the first version of him, and you're teleporting between the sections. So you'll be in his room, which is like I would call it the AR version of him, and you're fighting in there, and then certain moves, this is the big tricky part about learning it, it's about certain moves will trigger the teleportation into a certain move, and then you've just got to try and remember the stasis element that you leave the area in. For example, the boss will slam his sword down in the AR version, and then you'll teleport away into the first time you go to the actual boss room you first fight in, the non-AR version. It'll always be a slam down with the AoE coming at you. So you just dodge into it and you're fine. Now you've got to remember what move he uses before he transfers back. For example, 9 times out of 10, when he originally goes back to the AR version, before his attack will be a slash and then a pause before he slashes again. Then you'll teleport back to the AR version, and then you'll have to remember where he was at. So he just slammed his sword, he's going to send it left to you, so you got to dodge to the right to try and make sure you don't get hit by a sword and whatever else was also present at the time: lightning, pillars, root tentacles, so on and so forth, until you get sent back to the non-AR version, which then you've got to try and remember where he was at. He was about to swipe at me, so with a delay way, so I need to remember as soon as I get in, watch what he's doing so that you have a couple of seconds before he unfreezes and dodge his slice. This is where the difficulty comes in for me, because I struggle to remember and have patterns and stuff. But once I got that patterning down and started to really focus up and remember what move I was leaving on, what move I was coming back to and stuff, I still got sloppy and still made some mistakes, got hit by the teleportation a couple of times, but goddamn is it so cool just teleporting back and forth trying to remember which section and which boss was doing what. It is really fun. Eventually, he will then, the AR version will do this thing where he spawns all these little balls and tentacles around and starts doing pulse shock waves. You just gotta shoot all the balls in the timely fashion, and then most likely you'll either get teleported out before you've shot all the balls, and they'll have to do a round with the other guy, come back, finish the balls off, and then you have a quick moment to get free damage on him. And once you've done that, it's back to the old tried and tested method of just keep yourself positioned well in one world, keep yourself positioned in the other world, remember what's going on in both worlds at the same time, and then just keep trucking, keep moving, and eventually he falls down. Now, this is the part of the story that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Spoilers ahead if you don't want the actual ending of the story ruined, but you've made it this far, so I don't know why you would be here if you didn't. Pretty much, you find out that the failsafe option is just a calamity effect. Everyone gets wiped out and it restarts over. And that's the only option. Clementine acts like there's a different option, takes the crystals and runs with it, and then you've got to do a little survive the round motion. I thought it was another form of the boss and started panicking hella, but it just turns out it's just a survive the wave of enemies that they're spawning in at you. And then after you've done that, it just turns out that Clementine just killed everyone. Everyone disappears into the void of the crystal in Clementine, and the only thing that is left now is a crystal just floating out in the middle of nowhere. No route, no humans, no worlds left. And then I think the idea is supposed to be, now that this has happened, this is how the resets work. We're going to be in an endless cycle unless a DLC explains what the fuck is actually going on. The only thing I can think is this is explaining how we keep resetting time. We're just not getting it right, I guess. And I guess a DLC might fix that at some point. But as it stands, Clementine always sacrifices herself, and we always wake back up in a rooted world and restart from the get-go. And it seems like a time loop has been created for some reason. I can't really make heads or tails of it, but I think that's what's supposed to be happening. And with that being said, that's Remnant 2 in a nutshell. That is the whole experience I had playing Remnant 2 Electric Boogaloo Souls-Likes with Guns Edition. I would rate it pretty highly. I enjoyed majority of my time with the game. There's only so many options where I was kind of like, this kind of stinks, I wish I wasn't doing this. But for the majority of the time, I enjoyed every moment I had with Remnant 2. I can't wait to play more of it, find more of the secrets out, do more stuff. The replayability seems to be massive, with actual things to do other than just level up my trait cards, and that's about it. There seems to be so much other things to grind for and to master my build that it seems a lot more funner to me, and a lot more things to do, and the adventure mode seems better and stuff. So I can't wait to reroll the campaign to see how different it actually feels, or if it's just going to feel the same every time or not. It's all up in the air at the moment. So far it feels different from what I've played, but it's always up for debate if it stays that way or not. But yeah, Remnant 2 was a very fun game for me. I enjoyed my time with it, and let's put it on the tier list.